So today was actually a pretty big day for MMA news and also UFC news, as we got some UFC 300 fights and rumors, but I wanted to talk in this video about the proposed MMA rule change, which I believe was originally proposed by Ariel Helwani on Twitter, because this is going to be pretty big. I mean, people still debate to this day whether or not a grounded opponent is a grounded opponent, and this new rule change is obviously going to change that, but it's also going to change the ruling as well. Now, this has been proposed to, I believe, the California State Athletic Commission, as well as the Association of Boxing Commissions and Combative Sports Mixed Martial Arts Committee, I believe in California as well. But let's just talk about it. Let's start a little discussion about whether or not this is a good move. I think it is actually going to be a pretty big move and a good move if it does get passed. So let's talk about it. This is what people debate at the moment. This is the current ruling. The current language is kneeing and or kicking the head of a grounded opponent. A grounded fighter is defined as anything other than the soles of the feet bearing weight. Now that can be interpreted in many different ways, and that is why a lot of people do have disagreements when it comes to it, because let's say a fighter, is on their feet and they're leaning forward, potentially up against the cage, and only their fingertips are touching the ground. You could argue that those fingertips are not weight bearing. And obviously what that means is that they are not weight bearing, means that they should potentially be allowed to get kneed in the head. But what happens pretty regularly is people just put their hands down on the mat, and if they get kneed in the head, then they say that they're weight bearing. So this next rule, which is going to change the way that it is, I guess, interpreted, is going to be a good change. Now, this is the proposed language: kneeing and or kicking the head of a grounded opponent. A fighter shall be considered grounded and unable to be legally kneed or kicked to the head when any part of their body besides their hands or feet comes in contact with the canvas. So that means that a fighter can be in the situation where they've got their feet on the ground and their hands on the ground, but no other part of the body is on the ground. They can be legally kneed in that position. They can get kneed in the head. Now, this still does mean that Aljamain Sterling would be able to get down on both knees and get prepared to play the meat flute and get away with not getting kneed in the head, but it is going to be a step in the right direction. And what I mean by that is, you see Aljamain Sterling, you see him get on his knees are going to be weight bearing. That's going to make him a grounded opponent unable to be legally kneed. But if Aljamain Sterling was ready to stand up after he's finished playing the meat flute, and he stands up and he puts both hands on the ground, then only his hands and feet are touching the ground, he can get kneed in the head. So what this is going to mean is it is going to put the advantage back in, I guess, strikers that are good at defending takedowns. Because at the moment, what does happen a lot is when a wrestler or just a fighter that wants to get a takedown in general shoots for the takedown, they can't really get punished for it, because if they get kind of reversed or, I guess, sprawled, and they've got their hands and knees on the ground, they can't get kneed in the head, and they can kind of just get away with it. Whereas with this ruling, only fighters that have more than their hands and knees on the ground can be legally kneed. So obviously it does mean that a fighter, if they put a knee down on the ground, let's say a fighter is up against the cage, they can drop to one knee. That would mean that they can't get legally kneed in the head, but as soon as they lift that knee up and only their hands and their feet are on the ground, then they can get kneed in the head. So what it is pretty much just creating much simpler wording. Well, not simpler wording, because there are more words, but what it means is this new wording that has been proposed means that it will be interpreted a lot better. Now, it doesn't mean that you can go all one championship, and let's say you knock someone down and they're lying on the back, you can't just go in there and just foot stomp them into oblivion like Yusaku Kinoshita does. You can't do that. But what you can do is, obviously, if you've got a fighter in a bad position up against the cage and their feet and their hands are just touching the ground, they can get kneed in the head in that position. So it's a good move. Now, it is a step in the right direction. In fact, I actually like this rule change quite a bit, because what it does is it's not just throwing everything at the committee, which already probably aren't too keen on getting people kneed in the head in general. But what it does is it just kind of slowly works into the right direction, because after this, they might propose something like a fighter, if they're on their knees, they can get kneed on the head. So Aljamain Sterling can't play the meat flute. So you guys can kind of understand what I'm trying to go with there. I think it's a good move. And honestly, even if they stuck with this move forever, it's much more clearer than the ruling that they've got right now. Because at the moment, people just put their hands down and they can't get kneed in the head, which is a bit silly because you could argue they're not weight bearing. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I think this is a good move. I look forward to it happening. And I'll see you guys in the next one.